Hello, Nathan.
Hey, Katie, I am so excited about this episode today. At first, I was like, okay, I can get this into one episode. And then
No.
I started researching.
And then we fell down 700 rabbit holes. Thank you, listener Kyle, for suggesting. Who did he suggest, Nathan?
Empress Cixi.
Yes.
Oh, good. I hope all of y'all enjoy this because it was so much fun to research. But tell us who she was.
Yeah, Empress Cixi was Empress Dowager of the 19th century China. So there's a lot of debate in history if, like Glinda of Wizard of Oz says, are you a good witch or are you a bad witch? Like if she was... Yeah, she's a divisive character. Some people say that she's gone down in history as a bad guy unfairly, and some people say she deserved it. But, if you've ever listened to Queen's podcast, there's always more to the story than surface level. So, yeah. But before we dive into her life and times, Nathan, tell us about this cocktail.
This is quite possibly at the top of my list of cocktails.
Ooh.
One of my favorite, hands down. So what I did is I took a shot and a half of rum,
Okay.
a half a shot of orange liqueur like Grand Marnier, and then a squeeze of about a half of a lime. And then you top that all off with about a third of a cup of watermelon juice.
Ooh.
And if you're feeling, because the name of the drink is called the Chinese firecracker.
Okay.
If you're feeling a little spicy, you can put a pinch of cayenne pepper in there. But I opted against that because my heartburn would say otherwise. Not only is the color just gorgeous, because it's this nice little pink color there, it is so tasty, so refreshing. Doesn't even feel like you're drinking any alcohol. Like, dangerous, so drink cautiously.
Yes.
But guys, this is at the top of the list. So if you've never made one of the drinks before, make this one.
Let's get into our girl Cixi. Nathan, get us started.
Yes, so Cixi was born on November 29th of 1835. So instead of giving you Western astrology realness, we're going to go straight for Chinese astrology because that's where our girl's from.
Yes.
So she was born in the year of the goat, which means they have very delicate thoughts, strong creativity, perseverance. They acquire professional skills very well. Although they look gentle on the surface, they're tough on the inside, always insisting on their own opinions in their minds. And they have this strong inner resilience and excellent defensive instincts. Spoiler alert, this describes her to a T.
Interesting. Okay, so she wasn't born with the name Cixi. In China, it's really common for people from noble families to be given one name at birth, and it'll change with their status. We saw that with Empress Wu as well. We've seen it a lot of times in this show. But like we do every time, we're just going to call her Cixi throughout the entire episode just to avoid confusion, because I think her name changes like 6 times.
Yeah, it changed a ton of times, so it's like, let's just continuity purposes.
Yes,
so
exactly.
You guys are like, oh, that's who they're talking about.
Yeah.
China was being run by the Manchurians at this point, and it had kind of been this way for almost 200 years. Mm-hmm. The Manchurian rule had been great, but it was kind of on the way out. And when I say great, with the question mark, it was also elitist.
Very.
Racist.
Yes.
Racist.
Yes.
Just straight up racist,
Well,
guys.
Interesting, because the Manchurians were the minority. And,
yes, they were like 1% of the population.
But they were the 1% because they were running everything, and they were very elitist and cliquey.
Yes, and if you were of Manchurian descent, you're automatically considered a noble badass.
Okay.
And so it's kind of this subtle, backhanded way of being like, you're not good enough. You can't sit with us.
And the Manchurian rule was not, it was kind of on its way out, like you were saying, when Cixi was a kid. China was going through the first of 2 opium wars when Cixi was a kid. So let's set the scene for the Westerners not being super great in this story.
Shocker!
Shocker!
We all know the Brits love their frickin' tea.
Blech.
And they are just hard up for that tasty stewed brown water.
You know, I am just not like the traditional British tea, like just like the breakfast British tea, just not a fan. Like, what do you?
Yeah,
I mean,
me neither.
I'll take like a chamomile tea or like a cinnamon tea.
Ooh, cinnamon tea, hibiscus tea is a
Yes,
good one too.
but
Like,
just
there's
like-
certain teas.
Just like the regular.
Earl Grey
Bleh.
type of. Let's keep on going on about them opium wars.
Ew. So Britain's like, hey girl, China, you are looking good over there with that sweet, sweet brown tea water. Let's trade. I'll give you what you want and we can like trade for tea. And China's like, you don't really have anything that we want. Like, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, back off. And Britain's like, I think I got something you might like. May I introduce you to opium?
And that's how Britain got China to be his drug-addicted girlfriend.
Ooh.
And as with any type of relationship, this was toxic. And cue Britney Spears. So there's all that, but let's talk a little bit more about our girl.
Yeah.
And less about the culture and the current events at the time.
Right.
If there's anything we need to know about Cixi is that she's smart.
Yeah.
Like, she wouldn't have been sent far away with some fancy education like all the Western nobles would. In fact, learning to read and write in her native language. In fact, learning to read and write in her native language is a whole thing.
Yeah. In case you missed it, Chinese is one of the more difficult languages to learn. And back then, it was like, it's really, really complicated, and it just wasn't common for everyone to know how to read and write.
Yeah, each word has a symbol, and if with the stroke of a pen, you could make pen into penis real quick.
Okay.
It's a bad example. We couldn't leave a Queen's Podcast episode without a dick joke.
I mean, there's going to be more, probably. I don't know. See what happens.
But reading and writing in Imperial Chinese was very, very complicated, and only the most educated people could do this. And by educated, of course, we mean she got that money, girl. She rich, bitch. Because regardless of culture, rich people love to gatekeep education.
It's true. But Cixi would write and read in Chinese, which was super rare for a girl. And she picked it up from her father. And she was basically her dad's little, like, right-hand man, woman, girl, right-hand girl. That might be important later.
Yep. Her dad was a member of the Border Blue Banner. Say that 3 times
Yeah.
fast. It's this incredibly complicated nobility system that another rabbit hole that you
don't
can
have
just
time
go
for.
down into.
Just don't have time for.
It wouldn't have been unheard of for dudes of this rank to educate their daughters, but it seems like Dad really went that extra mile when he realized that Cixi was really the most clever of all of his kids.
Yeah, and of course I'm going to make an Anne Boleyn comparison because that's just my entire brand. But it reminded me because like Cixi had a brother, and you know Anne Boleyn had a brother, but the boy wasn't the one that Anne Boleyn's dad sent to go live with and be educated at a French court. You know, he realized early on that, oh, my daughter's the one that's special. My daughter's the one that we need to elevate. And that's what Cichi's dad did as well. I think he even said, like, she's almost as good as having a smart son or something like that, which is, like, meant to be nice, but meant to be a compliment. But it's also kind of like, ugh, okay, Dad.
So while she was never given a formal education, she was recognized from a young age as being street smart.
Yeah.
And like a lot of Chinese families during the Opium Wars, they were struggling financially. And Cixi went to work to help out her family. And
work,
no, she wasn't selling opium on the corner to bring her family money. It wasn't that kind of gig. She was doing something so much more. She was doing about fashion.
Yes. Yes,
To
yes,
the
yes.
left.
Turn to the left. Yes. I love this. Our girl was making that coin as a seamstress. She was getting that money,
Yes.
sewing dresses, designing clothes, and she was really talented, which we love this for her. And she took on a lot of jobs sewing and designing, and she basically kind of single-handedly gets her family out of debt. So
Okay, girl.
okay, girl, yes.
You can really tell that dad valued her because she's an adolescent and she's already helping her dad balance the books. Like,
Yeah.
she's 12 and she's her dad's financial advisor.
Okay, let's switch gears and
Clack. That was me switching
Clark,
gears.
and fast forward a little bit. Now our girl is 16. So, you know, she's getting up there in age. She's 16.
Yeah, she's practically geriatric.
And she's single. Like, come on. So,
What's wrong with her?
Yeah. But the emperor needs a new consort and some ladies to fill out his, for lack of a better term, his harem. You know, her family is like, ooh, Cixi might be a good candidate. So let's get her out there.
Yeah, and now what we're going to talk about is kind of like a hodgepodge of practices that we've discussed in other episodes. Again, this is one of those rabbit holes that you could probably spend a whole episode on in and of itself. But like Empress Wu, who is the only other Chinese woman that we've covered, the emperor would have had his main wife, like consort.
Yeah.
But then he'd also have women that lived in his quote-unquote harem, more or less, which we saw in Roxelana. Roxelana.
Foxy, Roxelana. Yes.
Though thank God, unlike Roxelana, we don't think any of the women were like kidnapped and forced
in
into
oh
the
my
harem.
God. So the emperor at this time held one of those like bride shows that we've seen in Russian episodes before, where all the noble families from all over China would bring their daughters to more or less like compete to be chosen to be one of the emperor's either concubines or consort.
Yep. So let's meet the emperor real quick.
Right?
His name is Sheng Feng, and he's only about 5 years older than Cixi, which, whew, thank God.
Thank God. Do you remember the Empress Wu one where she was like, the first king that she was a concubine to was like older than her dad? So yeah, it could have been a lot grosser. But Sheng Feng hadn't really had an easy go as emperor. He'd only been emperor for about a year or two at this point, and already he's just stressed the fuck out. He'd inherited a bit of what scholars call a turd sandwich. Scholarly.
Official term.
Yes. Within his short time of being king so far, he'd already had 2 major revolts, like uprisings. And so like we've mentioned, the just things, there's the opium wars, there's no one's got any money. It's just he's dealing with a lot.
It's hard out here for a pimp.
It's hard. It's hard out here for an emperor. Yeah.
Anyway, back to the bride party. So Sheng Feng's not necessarily looking for boning material. I mean, he could find that if he wanted it, because he's got this whole laundry list of concubines. And these concubines are all ranked, like elaborate tiering system for all the king's ladies.
It's almost kind of like a caste system within within the harem. Yeah. And so when they were chosen, all the ladies would stay in their own little like places within the palace. Things could get, because they would like stay in close proximity, and you know, they're all kind of fighting for the emperor's attention, or they could be. So things could get kind of icky. Think like a Bad Girls Club meets Sister Wives meets Big Brother, like, or The Bachelorette or something like that. You know, like if things weren't run correctly, it was like drama for your mama and maybe might end in a little bit of murder.
Well, Empress Wu is the
Yeah.
primary culprit of that. Like,
Yeah.
she committed murder to move up through the ranks. So when the emperor is looking for an empress, he's looking for a woman to run that whole harem, that whole household. She doesn't need to be a stone cold fox, but she still needs to be boneable.
Yeah.
For the emperor. But most of all, she needs to have her wits. She needs to know how to manage a household full of women.
People need to
competing for
like
the
her.
emperor. Yes. And
She needs to be like Miss
that's not
Congeniality,
easy.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At that bride show, there are 60 ladies auditioning and to enlist in this weird sex army. And most of the women are sent home. I think only 11 progressed to the next round, and Cixi was one of them. So, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, the emperor hadn't chosen an empress. He chose a handful of women to join the harem. And then from there, he's going to pick an empress after he sees all of them in action.
Yeah.
So, Cixi is put in the 6th tier of concubines, and she is thrilled at this honor because it would have been a huge deal for her family.
Yeah.
She's like, fuck yeah, I got a golden ticket.
I gotta go.
That golden ticket gets her to the Forbidden City.
Ooh.
And she gets to stay in the concubine quarters, which BT does.
Yeah, those look
I
fancy as fuck.
I linked a photo of it, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Gorgeous place.
I can definitely put that link in the show notes. Yeah, it's fancy as fuck.
And Cixi is charming. She's witty. She's making friends. She's playing all these really good social games with everybody, getting in everybody's favor. So she's really succeeding.
Just a little side note. I didn't know. I'd never heard of I've never heard it referred to the Forbidden City in Beijing before. So I was like, what is that? So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. It's basically this cluster of palaces in Beijing with like a huge wall around it. And it's got in there a bunch of palaces. The palaces have 10,000 rooms in them. It's got like parks. Holy and it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It was built in the 1400s. So at this point, it's already been the main place for the king to live for 400 years. And it's called the Forbidden City because of how guarded it is and how like impossible it is to get into. So I think it's interesting to think about, like, because a lot of times we talk about these women from these noble families that spend a lot of time going to court growing up. She would have never been here before. This is her first time in the Forbidden City. So I have to wonder if she was nervous to move there. Because she'd only ever lived with her parents before, you know?
Yeah, but no worries.
No worries.
She's making friends, y'all.
Friends!
Enter another concubine who was also recently selected, Xian. Mm-hmm. And they seemed to hit it off from the get-go. They're both kind of very similar, level-headed, smart bitches who get shit done. And here at Queen's Podcast, we love that for them.
We love smart bitches that get shit done.
And this friendship of theirs lasted throughout their lifetime, which is
nice.
Great.
Yeah, they're, you know, maybe there's like an alternative story where they run away together. And I would have loved that. So what's also nice is that Cichi's new buddy has caught the eye of the emperor, and Xian is moving on up
to the Forbidden City.
And she's bringing Cixi with her. So Xian is made empress, and it pays to have friends in high places because 2 years later, Cixi is promoted to the 5th rank of concubine.
And now when the emperor is wanting to bone, if Xian isn't into it, guess who's getting those, hey, you up texts? You up? That's Cixi.
Yes.
She's getting those messages from the king because her bestie is literally empress, so her bestie trusts her and knows that she's not going to undermine her. Exactly. So she's always directing the empress towards her.
There
Or
are
the emperor towards her. Sorry.
yeah, or the empress. You know, we don't know what. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to write like an alternative history where it's a romance with Cian and Cixi, but I don't know.
Oh, that would have been beautiful.
I know. So there's conflicting stories about her time with the emperor. Some say that the emperor heard Cixi singing and kind of fell in love with her. There's also stories that she had like these stunning eyes that he was just kind of like hypnotized by. There's also stories about her very early on trying to give him political advice and him wanting to have her executed. Have you heard that one?
No.
So yeah, so the story goes that she was giving him political advice because, I mean, she's used to, you know, advising her dad and stuff. And he was just like not into it. So he actually like was going to have her executed for meddling. And Cian was like, hey, maybe that's an overreaction. And like goes to Cixi and is like, cut that shit out. And and so Cixi, like Cian saves Cici's life because the emperor was going to have her executed for talking too much. Big sexy mouth. And so,
yeah, again, we're having Anne Boleyn
crossovers
here.
Yeah.
We know that she wasn't his favorite concubine, but it does seem like, by all accounts, she lived a happy life at the Forbidden City. She had her best friend. She was moving up in the ranks. Everything's going great for her. And we think that she was honestly, genuinely happy at this point.
Yeah. And she was even happier when, a year after getting promoted, she gets pregnant.
She's preggers.
Yes. The emperor had a few daughters at this time, but it was like actually this entire ordeal that he didn't have any sons. You know, since girls can't run countries because uteruses,
Bagadix.
Cixi knows that if she has a boy, she's going to get even another promotion.
And guess what?
Yes.
It's a boy.
Baby boy, you've been on my mind. Fill my regency.
Once her baby boy reached 1 year old, she's elevated up so high in the ranking that she literally only answers to one person, and that's right, that's her bestie.
Woo-hoo. She is in a happy spot. She's got her son. She's got promotion. She's got her bestie. Let's go ahead and take a break while she is riding high, and then we can come back and hear the rest of her story.
Yeah.